didn't know.
You're just going to be standing in the background.
I'm gonna feel like.
Okay, we're gonna count down to 10 seconds, and then you can begin. 9, I went to good public school. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
First, I want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you to the esteemed members of the local press for showing up and taking time to discuss this important issue, especially for the Rose family and for the great people of the small town of Frankfort. Thank you, Sensō, for letting us use the restaurant. I know this is an imposition. Most people wouldn't be willing, but we have businesses here and people in Frankfort that care a lot about what's going on in the town. So that leads me to why we're here. Why are we here? I'll do my best to stay on track, but it's been a long road starting more than 30 years ago, around the time I moved to Frankfort as a young boy. Initially living in the Gateway subdivision, an A-plus manufactured housing neighborhood, and later into Butternut Creek Woods, where my parents still have a home. This is the Gateway community. As you can see, Gateway was the first subdivision in the area. Built on land my grandfather and father hunted birds close to 60 years ago. Now, 30 years later, it is surrounded by a medical facility and hundreds of homes to the west. When working with Frankfort to build that community, where my great-uncle Lloyd still lives, the partnership was asked to pay for into the Frankfort school system, District 210 and 157C, more than $800,000, which we did. Since it's designated as a 55 and up community, there are no impacts on the school system. Gateway was developed. Additionally, we funded increases to capacity to the Jackson Creek lift station and can supply those documents upon request. When paid for, it was capacity of over 2,000 units, Gateway only using 442 of those, under 25%. In the late 90s, my father, Mike Rose, purchased the 64 acres across the street from the existing Gateway and made plans for another phase of development, which we're calling Gardens of Frankfort. Frankfort led the fight to kill that future development, participating in and managing a lawsuit to prevent us from getting our zoning. All of this in spite of the clear benefits to the village, helping cure much needed elderly handicap housing needs for the city, and really not requiring any village services. We plow our own streets, we're not in the Frankfort Police Protection District, and have virtually zero crime. It's an idyllic little community for people like my great-uncle Lloyd, war veterans, etc. Also, Gardens of Frankfort will be of equal or better quality to what is across the street. Additionally, these developments, currently Gateway and when built Gardens, are being used by Frankfort as part of their calculation for affordable housing. The alternatives of which are subsidized housing options that Frankfort has to date avoided, to my knowledge. After a half a decade of fighting, we prevailed in court in 2003. I have a copy of a judgment here for your perusal, and I'm happy to furnish anyone who asks with all the source documents we have in our possession. The court acknowledged that our 64 acres was considered an extension of the Gateway subdivision. It acknowledged that the sewer and sanitary system, as well as the water system, that was improved and paid for by the Gateway development would be used for the 64-acre parcel. It granted our zoning for our use. At the time, we didn't think market conditions were appropriate to start the development and focused on other things. 18 years later, in 2021, Keith Ogle had just become the new mayor of Frankfort. It was determined that the market was ripe to start our development. We had a nice meeting. We educated Keith on our project, what we had gone through, and he told us we shouldn't have any issues in dealing with Frankfort, as we would just have to go through the normal process. Over the next 4 years, we found out what normal is, running into every roadblock in the system and some that we'd never seen before, having done this everywhere around the country. Nobody in my organization could make sense of what the village or the village's engineers were saying. Having done real estate development everywhere, I'm used to working with towns to accommodate what they want within the bounds of the law and what their rules are. But at the time, they asked us to pay $115,000 for a third-party study on a water system that we had upgraded at the village's request almost 2 decades earlier. We offered to pay for half, even though nobody else we're aware of was asked to pay for such a study that was petitioning the village. In a very odd turn of events, Frankfort ended up paying for it themselves. I didn't know the rationale for this at the time, but in retrospect, it seems pretty clear. They changed the timing of when the study was to be performed, waiting until the next spring when there would be sufficient rainfall to show problems inside the sanitary and water system in an effort to kill our project. That study, which Frankfort has, to my knowledge, not released to the public, in spite of the people having paid for it, says a lot of scary things if you're a Frankfort resident. We had our civil engineers take a look at it, and after their review, we had another civil engineer take a look at it, being, I would say, shocked at the results of what was in the study. Both had the same reading. It's not a matter of if, but when. Frankfort experiences sinkholes from the leaking water out of the pipes, and possibly more importantly, because of the health risks, when we experience a 50-year rain or more in Frankfort, the sanitary flow goes into the water system, and what you're going to have, at least in these 5 basins that cover this water system, is sewage coming through the basements of anyone in that area. And I don't know if that means that if we have a big snowfall and then there's a rain, that would calculate the same issue, but that would make it a lot more likely than a 50-year rain. This isn't the type of water you want in your basement. This is sewage. I wonder who the village engineer was that signed off on the design of this system. Because of the slopes of the pipes are not conforming with best practices and are causing the problems. That would be the first thing I figured out in this case if I were the chief executive. In normal circumstances, if the chief executive of a town finds out there's certainty of having sewage in a large portion of the town's homes, you'd imagine him or her circling the wagons and getting to work to fix that obvious problem. In this case, it was shielded from the trustees and not acted upon. So in this case, it was shielded from the trustees and not acted upon. When I learned personally after speaking with 2 of the trustees that would talk to me that Keith Ogle had communicated with neither of the people's representatives of any issues I've mentioned here, I was again shocked. How are the people we're supposed to govern do so without any appropriate information? This is when I started calling him controlling Keith Ogle. Nobody besides the village staff and Keith know what's really going on in the village of Frankfort, making the board pointless. What this normal process is for Frankfort under Keith is to be lied to, thwarted at every turn, and misled into spending tons of energy, money, and critical resources on projects that he or maybe someone on the staff decides isn't a project they want personally. They control the narrative on a per-project basis, obfuscating the realities and not addressing the critical issues that come up in the process, leaving petitioners with no regress. This has cost my family dearly, but if you speak to other petitioners of the city, you'll hear the same story. Talk to Josh Barrett, a civil engineer who wanted to do a solar farm on his own property. Water was the excuse to kill his project as well. This makes no logical sense in that use case, but it was used as rationale to kill his project anyway. As people continue to press the village to approve their projects, Robinson Engineering runs up the fees while people have no clue that their project is not going to be approved for political reasons. This shows up as a major cost to the village. As an example, New Lenox spent $650,000 on engineering in 2022 with 50% more population than Frankfort. Frankfort spent $1.25 million, more than double. It repeats every year. Like last year, Frankfort spent more than $1.7 million on engineering. I think that might actually be light, because that might only be to Robinson as well. Is it coincidence that one of the Frankfort trustees, Maura Rigoni, is an ally of controlling Keith and works for Robinson Engineering? That's a good question, and I hope one that the good people of the media can help us answer. So please, start asking around. This controlling attitude is costing the village dearly outside of only the engineering costs. Our example here is just one of hundreds of projects that have been stalled, killed, and/or increased the cost of, hurting the good people of Frankfort. All we're asking is that we be treated fairly and to be granted what we already decades ago won in county court, which is not in dispute. It's very clear that we're not the only ones if you ask around. I think people all over the country are waking up to the existing government schemes that seem to impede what people are trying to accomplish. People need to stand up. This is America. I thought we had property rights here. These are things that I just can't believe are going on. And this is un-American, it's wrong, and we won't stand for it. If controlling Keith can do this to my father, he can and has done this to others in the village. It's my decision to start here in Frankfort to make it better. As part of that effort, I'm doing my best journalistically to share with the townspeople of Frankfort what really is actually going on here. Media, you can make an impact here by doing what's right and reporting of what is a larger story that's happening in this small town here. Stand up with me and let's take Frankfort back for the people of this town. To that end, look around this room and talk to the people who've had to deal with the local Frankfort government, some of which are standing here behind me. You'll hear about other things that Keith's controlling attitude has affected around the town outside of merely development. I shouldn't say merely. And understand why I've decided to get so critically involved here. To that end, my family started the Frankfort Hall of Fame, where we induct people who've contributed to the town outside of government. Last year, we inducted Rob Zvona, our beloved football coach, who over the past couple decades has sent hundreds of kids off to play college ball, many with scholarships to pay for their schooling, and additionally has made Lincoln Way East a football powerhouse that perennially competes for the state title. And I know everyone in Frankfort is proud of that, proud of our kids. March 7th at CD&Me, we're inducting Ron Plants, who was a pivotal in founding the Youth Football League in the Frankfort Falcons. On top of these small tokens, I've committed to teaching the high school kids in Frankfort and in the local communities surrounding us how to do real journalism in their towns, keeping Frankfort and other communities honest with their dealings with their citizens. Justin Ozinga has agreed to donate his mayor's salary to that effort, should he be elected. Since we'd be looking over his shoulder and keeping him honest, I think this is a great step forward for the people of Frankfort and, frankly, for the American people. People got to start doing things, and this is our effort to try to do that. I'll let him tell his own story now, but I hope this is the dawn of a new age in Frankfort and elsewhere, where people can deal with their village officials forthrightly and expect the same from them. Thank you for your time and attention to this. I urge the members of the media to take an interest in what's going on here in Frankfort, and you could really make a big impact in a small town here if you report on the facts. And with that, I'll pass this along to Justin, who has a statement, and then we're happy to take any questions from you guys, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.
Just you just stand to the center of the mic and just spell out your first and last name and your title as it relates to your candidacy.
My name is Justin Ozinga, O-Z-I-N-G-A, and I am running for mayor of Frankfort.
And your statement to this.
It's great to be with you today. I've come here today to tell my version of the story and why I'm running for mayor of Frankfort. I'm a 21-year resident of Frankfort. I'm married. I have 5 beautiful daughters, ages 22 to 12. And love this town. I think Frankfort is one of the greatest villages in all of America. It's a town of beautiful people that love each other and look out for each other. And unfortunately, in our current circumstance, we have a leadership that is completely toxic, unhealthy, disorganized, and is anti-business, anti-development. And my story and how I came about this is I decided to build, to give back to the community, a beautiful project in downtown Frankfort here. And I went to the village and talked about village-owned land that was for sale. That was, there was some houses there they torn down, and it's in the town center, and they wanted to build the development. They were advertising for that, and it was in their 2040 plan that they bragged about being this amazing plan for the village in the future. And so I went to meet with the village mayor and staff and said, here's an idea I have. I'd love to build this project. What do you think? And they immediately got excited and said this would be amazing. It'd be a game changer for Frankfort. It'd be a huge economic, engine for the downtown area. And they said, yes, please do this. We'd be very thankful if you would invest your time and money, resources into downtown Frankfort for the people of Frankfort. And I said, okay, but there's one problem. I said, Frankfort has a really bad reputation of being welcoming at first and convincing people to invest here. But then they change their mind later when one or two squeaky wheels come out against it, and then they drop the development and act like they never approved it or wanted it in the first place. And I said, please don't do that to me. I have better things to do. This is not my full-time job. I'm a fourth-generation owner of a 97-year-old family business in Chicago. We have a long history of in the concrete business, the red and white striped trucks all over Chicagoland. We develop all over the country. I'm used to talking to many different villages everywhere. Sure, there's a lot of hurdles and headaches to do that, but most towns are very, common sense, and they'll agree with you, and they'll work with different issues to make it happen because they actually want business. They want the tax income. They want the new jobs in the town. Frankfort came across that way at first. So I met with them, and they said, please do this. This would be amazing. And I said, are you sure? I said, if you tell me now that you're going to change your mind later or you're not quite sure about it, no harm, no foul. I'll walk away. I'll go spend my time and money on something else. I don't have a problem with that. I won't be offended. But please, please, please don't have me spend a lot of time and energy and money working on this project and then change your mind later, because then you're just messing with me and you're not serious at all. So I'm giving you an out right now. Tell me, are you sure you want me to work on this? Oh, yes. Welcome to Frankfort, shaking my hand. This is going to be amazing. So I said, okay, I'm going to go work on this. So I spent the better part of a year and up to $50,000 on architects and engineering and studies on the feasibility of the project I was working on. It all came back very positive. And we have a 1890s theme in downtown Frankfort here, so I went above and beyond. I studied architecture all over Europe, and there's going to be a very ornate 5-star hotel, boutique hotel with 64 rooms and a steak restaurant, which everybody wants in town, the steak restaurant. They've been asking for this. And so I threw this idea by them, and they loved it. They said it looks beautiful, and so I continued with that. And then when it came time for me to submit my plans, I submitted it to the Economic Development Department, and I got a call back the next day saying, maybe you should go look at a cornfield a mile down the street and not where you want it to do. And I said, well, that's not going to happen. That's not what we discussed. Having a beautiful, ornate, European-style building in a cornfield next to a grocery store is not what I want to do, and that will not be successful. And so he's like, well, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just relaying what's told to me. So I called up the mayor, and I said, can we meet? There's some confusion here. So I met the mayor one-on-one, and I said, what is going on here? You told me that you were for this project, you wanted this project. I told you not to waste my time, and now I'm being told to go somewhere else. What's changed? And he said, well, it's an election year. Senator Hastings is after me. I'm really concerned about getting reelected, and can you just wait until after the election, and then we'll push this through? I said, with all due respect, your election has nothing to do with me. You told me you wanted this project. You told me to work on it. I gave you an out. You said you wanted it. And now you're telling me to wait another year or 6 months, delay it. And I said, that's not acceptable. I don't agree with that at all. And I said, what's the real reason? Why are you pushing this off other than your election? He goes, well, truth be told, Mrs. Ogle, his wife, isn't a fan of your project. She prefers the lot stays grass. I didn't know how to respond to that. I was very confused by that. It's village-owned land. The people owns the land. The trustees were never told about my project up until this point. They didn't know anything about it. And apparently the mayor's wife decides what gets approved in this town. I was very confused at that statement, and so I said, look, clearly there's a lot of things happening here. I've heard a lot of rumblings. The trustees and the mayor, some of them aren't even speaking to each other at all. It's very toxic. In my family business, the only way it's lasted 97 years, 100% family owned. I have 6 brothers. All of us are full-time working in the business and 1 cousin. And the foundation of any kind of relationship, if it's going to be a healthy organization, is trust. You have to have trust at the foundation of any relationship. And when that breaks down, everything breaks down. It starts with the leadership, okay? And there is no trust at the top of Frankfort leadership right now. They're not speaking to each other. There are decisions being made in closed-door rooms. When developers come to Frankfort and they want to get a project approved, it is decided by the mayor or the village administrator to not approve that project on their own volition. The trustees never even find out about these projects a lot of time. The residents never find out about projects. Meanwhile, our taxes go up every year. Just this last year, everybody's taxes went up mostly by over $1,000, just in a single year. It's unaffordable. We don't own our homes anymore. We lease our homes from the government. And the only way to get that down is to bring in more businesses that can help offset those taxes. And Frankfort doesn't want that, apparently. They want to keep it the same. They want the town to apparently just die off. There's people moving away. There's nice homes that are getting sold. People are moving elsewhere because this town is stuck in time. And we wanted to change that. And so I asked the mayor, I said, look, clearly I have a lot to add. I'd like to volunteer my time, and I've offered this several times. How can I help you? How can I help Frankfort become a better place? Because I'm invested in this town. I don't want to move. I love it here. I want to live here. And his response was, well, the center chair is up for election in April. And I said, what's the center chair? I've never heard of this. And he goes, the mayor. And I said, well, you're not running for re-election? And he goes, no, I am. And he thought that was really funny. He thought that was a joke, being passive-aggressive, being cute with me. And I said, once again, I didn't know how to respond to that. So I started doing my own research, started talking to all kinds of developers, national developers that are all over the place. And word is on the street is Frankfort is closed for business. Do not waste your time building in Frankfort because it will take 2 to 3 years at minimum, twice or 3 times the expense. And I don't know what's happening in this town, but Frankfort's closed for business and New Lenox is taking all the business. We had a beloved children's museum in downtown Frankfort that all the residents poured their heart and soul into, many, many volunteers, thousands of dollars. My own family business, our foundation, donated thousands of dollars to the Children's Museum, 40,000 annual visitors a year, more than half of those coming from outside the area. They wanted to work with the Frankfort just to get benefits for the only employee they had. They had one employee, and the rest were all volunteers. And the mayor refused to even talk to them about this. He dismissed it outright. The trustees were never made aware. New Lenox, Mayor Tim Balderman, you got to give him credit. He heard about it. He went after it. He made him an offer. The Children's Museum is now in New Lenox. Very successful children's museum, attracting tons of people to the town next door. And by the time that they accepted the offer of New Lenox, the trustees found out after the fact, and it was already too late. It was gone. The trustees never even knew there was a discussion of losing the crown jewel of downtown Frankfort. A lot of different businesses and restaurants like Raffy's Candy Shop opened up next to the Children's Museum because it was there. And now that business is gone. All those people are no longer coming here. It's just wrong. There's a total lack of transparency. There's a lack of trust. This needs to be fixed. I didn't want to run for office. I tried to convince other people to become mayor. Nobody else wanted to do it. It's a thankless job. I get that.
Thank you.
I'm doing it. I'm knocking on doors like crazy. I get more complaints about the total disregard for the residents' opinions on how to build in this town and what to build. And the mayor himself just told me he doesn't want any low-income housing in this town. Places like the Gardens of Frankfort would be phenomenal for Frankfort. I knock on so many doors of widows that are living in 3,000, 4,000 square foot homes in downtown Frankfort. They want to downsize. They don't want to move out of Frankfort. They want to live here, but there's nowhere to go to. The new townhouses and developments that are being built here are $850,000 and up. Who can afford this stuff? My own 5 children, my oldest daughter's engaged to be married this fall. She's looking at houses at Piedmont because she can't, or the others, Lockport or New Lenox. She can't afford to live in Frankfort. And so it's like, what are we doing here? We don't have housing for seniors to downsize that want to stay here. We don't have housing for the new families that want to stay here. We only want $1 million homes. I mean, they're great, they're beautiful, but that's not very inclusive of the population. Why are we only serving the top tier echelon of society here in Frankfort? Are we that special that we can't accept people from from diverse cultures and diverse income levels and everything else? I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense to me. I love everybody, and I want people to be included and to have an opportunity to live here. Frankfort is beautiful. It shouldn't be reserved for just the super wealthy. And it needs to stop. The leadership needs to change. We need a brighter future for Frankfort where everybody's welcome. And it's time for that leadership to change. I'm here to do that. And one of the things that frustrates me most about politics is sort of this rule of reciprocity. If someone gives you a check and then you somehow owe this developer or this contractor or the engineering company. He spoke about Robinson. Robinson has a $1,000 check going to Ogle on, I think it's on auto pay, every 6 months. And meanwhile, they're just completely running roughshod over the residents. I did my own project here in town. I had to pay $16,500 for a sidewalk in lieu of actually doing it. A sidewalk that'll never be built. Time value of money is probably going to cost $100,000 for that sidewalk with my money that they're holding. And I went to go argue that, and they said, you got to talk to Robinson. So I talked to Robinson. They said, it is what it is. Take it or leave it. And so I go back to the village, and they said, well, if you don't pay Robinson, you're not getting your permit. So I had the choice. Do I write a check for $16,500 or not get my house built? So I wrote the check. It's not about the money. It's about the way people are being treated. We're being treated like second-class citizens in our own town, and it's wrong. Why are you treating us this way? We need to change. We need a positive leader that wants to include people. During 2020, all the resident committees were canceled under because of COVID. Fine, I get that. But he never brought them back. There's no economic development committee. There's no finance committee. There's no events committee. There's no help for senior citizens in the committee. I walk around this town. There's all kinds of help that the seniors need. I knocked on a door yesterday. An older man, well into his upper 80s, almost 90 years old, went to the village. His computer got hacked, and he couldn't fill out a village form. And he went there, and they said, not my problem. We don't do computers here. And it's just like, that's an easy win for a village to help a senior citizen. Like, help him with his stupid computer. Like, come on, guys, get with the program here. So I want to change that. I want to give Frankfort back to Frankfort, give it back to the residents, allow everybody to live here that wants to live here, bring back more housing, more affordable housing here in Frankfort. And there would be no greater project to be proud to sponsor than the Gardens of Frankfort. And it's just like the whole water issue with the sewer system, like, this is not that complicated. Figure it out, guys. If we need to expand it, expand it. We're going to need it anyways. The future is bright in Frankfort. It's growing. Let's get ahead of it, not be reactive, be proactive. So let's go after it. I'm excited about Frankfort's future. I'm excited to become mayor. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's my speech.
Just a few questions, Mr. Rose, if you can come to the center.
Sure.
I'm getting in trouble by Channel 5 here, and I got to ask you this question. Much of which we read in the Tribune recently on this project, some believe there could be, to Mr. Ozinga's point, issue of classism as it relates to lower income class residents having an opportunity to sustain themselves here in the village of Frankfort. Is that the way you view this, and what's your take on that in a soundbite way?
Sure. Well, Frankfort's always been a premier community. When we moved into Gateway, when I was in 5th grade, I was called trailer boy at the school. There is a little bit of that attitude, but I think that should be gone because the Gateway Manufactured Housing Park is beautiful, and the people there take care of their homes, and they're a wonderful part of the community. They're the people that go see their children's sports games and dance recitals and music recitals, and these are babysitters for the town, and they shop in the town of Frankfort to increase the tax base. I just don't see why that is the case, but I don't really have much of an explanation because the way that we're communicated with at Village Hall is opaque, non-transparent.
Let's talk about that for a second, because the mayor has alluded to, and he'll get questioned today. I've been told he's going to get questions from the press based on this.
Is he in town or is he in Florida?
I have a thought on this. So, I went to one of the mayor's annual speech on the state of the village, and there's a new project in downtown Frankfort where the Borg Warner building used to be, right in downtown. And there was some concerns about low-income housing coming in here, or Section 8 housing coming into downtown Frankfort. Everybody wants this place to, be only highfalutin. And so they asked the mayor that question. He said, "Oh, don't worry, it's not Section 8. It's Section 850,000." And everybody's clapping, and it's just like, what have we turned into at Frankfort? We're not a bunch of snobby, what is going on here? We need to include everybody. That's what makes a great community, is diversity. And let everybody have a chance to live here. Give everybody opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And secondly, the mayor's adamant about using this sewer water issue as the main issue, the main ingredient, if you will, that's preventing you from expanding. How, your engineers, you have engineers that work for you. What is their take on this?
Well, I mean, they see this all over. You know, it's not that every village is run appropriately and don't have water issues, et cetera, but they can't make heads or tails of how to move forward. It's just like a blank slate of, no, you're screwed. You don't get to do anything here. I don't think it's an issue.
And describe the communication between
So-
you and the mayor's office.
Well, you asked the mayor. Our initial communication was very positive. When we sat down with him, it was, you guys are okay. All you have to do is go run through these steps. And as we did those steps, new things pop up out of nowhere. And 3 years in, we end up with this water study that they're trying to get us to pay for. It's like, why wasn't that addressed up front? And by the way, why are you giving permits into everyone else in these 5 basins if there's a water issue? Like, it's either that there is a water issue and there should be a moratorium on permitting and development in this town, or there isn't a water issue. It's got to be one or the other. You can't have it both ways. And what this town does is, whatever the political flavor of the moment is, they just use that rationale to kill the developments. And that's true across the board, especially with that solar project. I mean, how on earth can you make water an issue of a solar project that doesn't require any water?
Great. Mr. Ozinga, if you could come to the center. Obviously, you're a candidate for mayor. You have a close affinity with the business community here. Are these type of communication issues what you're hearing on the trail from other business leaders? And how has that had an impact on their state of affairs and their respective businesses?
In the process of running for mayor of Frankfort, I have gone far and wide talking to just about most home builders, most commercial builders, most developers, and the word on the street is Frankfort is closed for business. Don't bother, don't waste your time. Go to New Lenox, go to other villages. They don't want your business here. On average, it takes 3 years to get a project approved before a shovel's even put in the ground, and significant expense. And if it was guaranteed that after 3 years and a lot of expense that you would have a project to build, I think, it's unreasonable, but people would do it. What makes it worse is after 3 years, they're rejected to build the project that they want, or in this case,
30 years.
30 years.
Well-
So it's like, why are we playing games with people's time and money? It needs to stop. The politics need to stop. We need leadership that has a backbone, that if they tell a developer they're going to get behind it, that they stand behind it. They need to have, we don't need any more marshmallow leaders in this state. We have enough of them. So please have a backbone. If you're gonna commit to something, then stay with it. And if you're only concerned about getting reelected, go find something else to do.
Well, let's stay there. Let's campaign rally our first time. Let's stay there, because if you were mayor, how would you handle this situation? One, would you grant a permit for him to expand? And two, how would you resolve the water issues?
So I don't know enough about the water issue. I just got into this, and I've been talking to Dan, and so the water issue is what it is. Like, if there's no capacity, let's increase the capacity, because between this project and all the cornfields in between the downtown, there is a lot of room for development. To say that there's not going to be any of that developed over time is just crazy. That people over time, they're going to want to move to Frankfort because I'm going to become mayor and we're going to make this town great. And so we're going to have a lot of development here. The right development, not to freak everybody out. It's going to be great development that Frankfort residents will be proud of, okay? But let's get ahead of it. We need to be proactive, not reactive, okay?
Yeah,
And one thing on the political front, I want to say this. I've committed to not taking a single contribution, donation, campaign dollar from anybody once elected. I don't want to be beholden to anybody, any developers, any engineers, any residents, nobody. Once I'm elected in Frankfort, I will not accept a single dollar from anybody. I know you don't hear that very often from a political candidate, but I'm not doing this because I have nothing better to do. I'm doing this because Frankfort deserves better.
And
Last question for you, Mr.
And I'll make sure that that's true as we report on the city over the next 4 years.
Back to the issue. Let's say if the world shatters and Mr. Ozinga somehow isn't the mayor, where do you go from there?
Well, I've made a commitment to do this for 10 years, and so if Keith Ogle, if controlling Keith ends up being the mayor for the next 4 years, he's going to have we're going to be putting the microscope on the village, and we're going to make sure that everybody knows what's going on during his tenure. Hopefully we can help make the village a little better even under his leadership.
I mean, what Mr. Ozinga pointed out is impressive, the things that he would not accept. We should have ran for Mayor Dalton, that would have really sounded good. But yet and still, having a mayor with those particular set of credentials obviously goes a long way. You've been here your entire life, and this is just a political question. Having someone who's not going to take contributions from other business leaders, who's going to donate his salary to various causes, how would that improve the health and wealth of this community? How would that be seen?
Well, eliminating the conflicts of interest is a huge step forward. You know, and Justin and I don't know each other very well, only got to know each other over the last month or so. And, you know, with what I do know about him, I fully believe that he's made that commitment, and he's not doing this for himself. He's doing it for the town. That's where my heart is. Hey, we have our one specific project here that we want to get completed, but this is a passion project for me. I don't get civically involved very many places. This is this is where I grew up, where I lost my athletic career, where I became a man, you know. Oh, well, I said became a man afterwards, but as my wife's over there. Yeah, I mean, this is it's disgusting to see what's going on here. I look at this as an issue. It is a small town issue, but this is something that's going around the country. You know, politicians, people don't like the word politics. People don't like politicians. That's because of the type of politicians that we have. If everybody came in with the right mentality and was trying to make the city better that they were working in, or municipality that they were working in, that wouldn't be the case. So, look, I think it's an incredible start to have somebody who's not in it for self-interest. You know, I can't speak for Justin or where his heart is, but that's what I see. And my commitment to helping him do that is where that isn't the case inside the village, we'll expose it.
All right. Good job, guys. Thank you, everybody. One second. One question.
Dan, if you can describe what that park will look like and how it will benefit Frankfort residents.
I'm sorry?
If you could describe what the park will look like
The park.
and how it will benefit the gardens of Frankfort and how it will benefit the residents.
Sure. So there's a pretty good example of what the park would look like across the street at Gateway Manufactured Housing Park. But it's high-end manufactured homes and would be up to the same quality and standard as Gateway. I'll ask the members of the media to go through and take some quick video or some pictures of that community. It should pretty much mirror that across the street.
Thank you, guys. We got to hurry up and get it. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, one more.
We'll move the mic.
Yeah, the one other thing that it'll help Frankfort with.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The one other place where it will help is, you know, yeah. But as the town does develop in the future, there is an attitude of let's not have affordable housing in town. This is at least a stopgap measure to make sure that this qualifies under those rules for the state so that they don't have to do Section 8 housing.
Very good. Stay together. He just wants to get a group shot. That'll go well for the campaign.
Where are we looking?